So these are the major things you need to perform, okay, for every single change, whether it's making a new feature or a new bug fix. As you guys work on a sprint, every single member should constantly work on the things, okay? But when you do work, it's not just about writing the code. It's about checking in the code to version control with Git. You need to know how to build, the package, everything. Then we briefly talk about testing, write some test cases. And after that, everything you feel comfortable and confident, let's try to deploy that. Okay, we talk about deployment today. And then you also need to know some of the very basic things you often need to do for operations. And finally, if we can set up continuous integration, it will make this whole cycle much simpler. Okay, so today I want to focus on deployment. Okay, deployment, the concept is very simple. Okay, so I want to go back to the example we've been working on. So the same kind of budget lunch project, very simple. Okay, I'm going to try to run the project here. Make sure I can run it. I'll do a Python budget lunch. I'll do the local version. And remember, we need to create this environment, virtual environment for Python. So I'll do a source and it's going to be this folder here, activate. All right, so once we activate it, we do Python budget lunch local DB, and that's going to trigger our project. So I go to the local host. All right, so that was the project. Okay, so still test it with a $10 and we can still get the results. Okay, so everything is working, well tested, it's good. However, guys, so this one, as you can see, the address is 172.0.0.1. That IP means local host. You can also say local host. Actually, it does the same thing. When it's local host, that means it's only available to your local machine. Like none of you guys can actually visit my machine unless I do some kind of IP exposure. If we're in the same Wi-Fi, if the all the router allows your traffic, might be okay, but it's very complicated. In the school's Wi-Fi, there's no way you can do this because IT department doesn't allow all this direct access or visit across different IPs. So this is mostly limited to local. So when we talk about deployment, okay, we talk about deploy our software, deploy our app to the customers so that people can actually access it. Okay, so we are working on a web service application, a web application. All right, that means instead of running the local machine, you need to run it on a server machine. Okay, now you might be saying, okay, can I actually turn my computer into a server? Well, the answer is yes, but very rarely people do that because if it's a server, you have to make sure your computer is always on 24 hours, and that's something you cannot really guarantee. Okay, and also I mentioned about all the IP stuff. If you use your home, even home Wi-Fi, you could still actually turn that into a public IP, but there are a lot of configuration constraints. And not to mention the performance is not very good. And the power, everything, you got to make sure everything is always consistent, right? So normally when we talk about server, you should actually use a very dedicated server to run the program, make sure it's very reliably always on with good performance. Okay. Now, if we talk about this one 15, 20 years ago, what you need to do is that you need to actually order a server machine. Okay. Normally, I don't know if you've seen those kind of server machines. Nowadays, the server machine, the desktop machines are much bigger than your regular desktop computers. Right now, people use all this rack, like the short thinner, okay, much thinner. But the server machine is a little bit different from the regular personal desktop machines. But it's essentially the same kind of computer. And then you actually order those, you configure all the networking, you buy the router, you buy a lot of cables and set it up. And that's how you set up a server. And then you start run the program. Uh, by the time you actually have everything set up, probably already 1, 2 months already passed. Okay. But today, nobody do that anymore. And everyone using cloud. Okay. The cloud basically means that somebody else, all these cloud providers, they create all the servers. So there are still physical servers there. But then we as users, we don't have to worry about how to manage those, how to configure those, how to do the networking stuff. They actually will allocate the server for us based on our demands. Okay, so basically for our project or any other project you're doing, if you need a server, pretty much cloud server is the only choice you will do. Nobody gonna do the physical server anymore. Okay, nobody. Unless you are getting to the level at like OpenAI, maybe they will do some kind of their own server just to lower some cost. But even that, if you see some news, they still try to use some servers from Oracle, from other providers, because at the end, we want you to focus on building application writing software, we don't want you to spend too much time on managing all the server stuff because that's not really helping solving the problem from the customers. Okay. So anyway, for our project, I do require everyone to try to use AWS to do this one. Okay. So I know there are a lot of other options you can do. Vercel is very popular. Previously, people use Render on Render. Older days, people use Heroku. There are some this cloud hosted services that make everything very convenient, but I do want you to go back to the like a fundamental way of running servers, creating server, configure everything, make sure everything can be executed. So I do require when you use AWS. Also, don't use Google Cloud as a cloud because AWS is the most popular one. That will help your resume. Okay, if you go to work, more than likely you're going to use AWS, so that will give some experiences. Okay, so for AWS, you have, let me actually log out. So that means every team need to set up an AWS account. Okay, I assume a lot of you already have it. And then once you have it, you can sign in. And then when you sign up, I think you do need to provide a credit card. Okay, so one of you guys probably can use your account and you can add others to there. In general, they provide this, if this is a new account, they provide the free tier that pretty much you don't have to pay too much or nothing to for this application because all you need to do is just a small server. Okay, so you put a credit card, but it's not going to charge you too much. If you already have an account, either you use a different email or maybe ask someone else to create an account. Okay, so once you log in, that is AWS. Okay, AWS is a cloud provider by Amazon. So that's basically the leading player for the whole cloud computing. So all they're trying to do is Amazon has so many of these servers. Okay, I'll tell you more history about this one because Amazon, they run their e-commerce business and they need so many servers. And then at one point they find that they can't reuse all the servers. The machines are kind of wasted. So they were trying to come up with a way to utilize those resources. So they create this cloud computing concept. So Amazon was the first company that created cloud computing concept. But the idea is just virtualize all the servers so people can always use their servers. So when we are talking about using Amazon server, AWS servers, you're basically using the machines provided by Amazon. Okay, so this is the login, and once you open it, you can see they are very big right now. They provide all different kind of services. There are probably over 100 to 100 different kind of services. In the beginning, they only have maybe 5 to 10 different services. The most important ones, just two. Maybe one is the EC2, one is the S3, the storage service. Now they have a lot more. Okay, so we're not going to cover anything everything here, but the most fundamental service is this thing called EC2. It's called Elastic Cloud Computing. Okay. And then basically that's their portal for you to create a server to request servers anytime you want. Okay, so I'm gonna go through this demo very quick, but after today, you guys need to go here to create your account, create your server, and run your application. Okay, so the goal today is very simple. Now I'm running this application locally with a local host. We need to run it in the Amazon server so that we have a more public domain or public IP so any one of you can also visit it. Okay, so that's the goal for today. Okay, that whole process of running, moving things from local to the public environment, that process called deployment. Okay, very simple. All right, so to do that deployment, let's create a server first. So you log in, okay, you go to EC2. I go through this very quickly because I think you can find plenty of resources, whether it's YouTube tutorials or ChatGPT can help you. It's not really that difficult today to do this. A lot of you probably already done this one. I'm going to go to something called instances. In EC2, in Amazon, the instances means server. Okay, it's just a different name. So from here, you can start to launch the instances. Okay, so before you do this one thing I want you to notice is that on the top corner here, you can select something called a region. Okay, so as you can see, United States, there are 4 regions, and then you also can do regions in other countries. Region means a physical data center. So for example, they have a Northern California region. That means somewhere in Bay Area, they set up all these warehouses. They have hundreds of thousands of machines and servers there. And then the biggest one is in Virginia. They also created Oregon and Ohio in the past years. And then other countries, if you choose those, that means there are physical servers sitting in that area, in that country. Okay, so that's how they physically split all the different servers. Now, the reason they do this one, because number one, sometimes if you want to launch something internationally, right? So if you want to run something for Asia, if you put a server here in the US, it's fine, but it's a little bit slow. It's a lot more efficient if you put the server in that specific country. So that region allows you to do that. Think about how easy that is. If you don't have this one, and then you got to buy the machine, you find a space in that country to put it there to set up and set up all this internet account. It's almost impossible to do it. Okay, so that's why cloud computing make it so easy. Another benefit of having also many different regions is that they provide a better availability. So sometimes you will see the news that the thunderstorm like cut the power off and then you lose the whole region, but that's fine. You have other region to support the backup. So just give you some kind of redundancy. So I do want you to know this one because when you log in, you got to make sure that you are in the right region. Because if you switch, I switch to the Northern Virginia, you're going to see different list of instances. Sometimes you go there, I don't see any instances. I don't find any servers. So you create another one. It turns out that you actually create extras because your server might be in a different region. So that one's something you got to be very careful about. Okay, so since this one is bounded with your credit card, okay, anytime you start a server, there will be a cost. Okay, but if you still with a free tier for just one server, that's fine. But then if you open the second and third one, that's going to charge you by the hours. So especially if your credit card there, you got to make sure that it's all well managed. Okay, so just in case you have some teammate that really hates you, okay, you got to be very careful of giving all the access because they can open some kind of server that can cost easily like many dollars per hour. Okay, so but that's something to be careful about region. Okay, so once you know the region, let's actually start launch an instance. Okay, the instance means a server. Okay, we give a name. We're gonna give a budget lunch server. And then here you're gonna choose the operating system. Okay, since we're talking about the servers, most of you are using Mac and Windows. You should know those are personal computer operating systems. You can run servers on those, but in the professional server programs, rarely people run that on Windows Personal or Mac OS. Okay, we use more dedicated operating system that better fits for the server programs. Most time people use Linux. The reasons are I'm not expert on Linux, but then if you ever use Linux, it's compared with Windows. Linux is much more like raw, right? So not much like graphical UI. Ubuntu has some graphical, but most people do like terminal stuff. It's simpler. It's lighter weight compared with Windows. Windows is so fancy, right? So, but when it's fancy, it costs more resources. It also, potentially has more risks, more attacks, more vulnerable. But the Linux is very simple, so it's a lot easier for them to keep everything secure. So this is something when I was a student, I often don't understand. A lot of people at that time often criticize Windows vulnerability, always has cyber attacks against Windows. And it makes Windows look very bad. I was always wondering why, Windows is a professional company. They got a better developer. Why it's not as good as Linux? And later on, I realized, well, it's not because the people who build Linux are smarter. It's just because Linux itself is smaller, lighter, and less people are targeting them. And because they're simpler, they can it's easier for them to manage all the security. But Windows you got to handle with all the different personal users. Most users are not professionals, so that's why it's a lot harder for them to deal with the security. Okay, so that's why when you run a server, because you don't really need to see the program or sitting there, you don't need the graphical. So terminal based normally works really well. So that's why Linux is often the best choices. There are different versions of Linux. Ubuntu, is they have a very pretty, it's open source. They have some free version and good support. The Red Hat is commercial Linux. You normally have to pay for this one. And then they have some others. I'm not too familiar with it. And then Amazon, they do provide their own version of Linux. I would normally go with Amazon's version because I assume that's gonna work very well with their servers, with their machines. So I'm gonna stay with that one. It's not gonna make a very big difference. So that choice is very important. The second choice, this one is more important. This one choose the server type. And you can see this one has a free tier eligible. If that's the free tier eligible, that means you can use that for free for 1 year. So this one you choose basically the specs. Okay, how big that, oh wait, this is still the server. Okay, so the operating system. This is the Linux. I'll just stay with this one. Now the important ones are here, this one, the instance type. Okay. This is the configuration. Okay, basically RAM, disk, CPU, network, all of this stuff. As you can see, they have so many choices today. Okay, in the beginning, they maybe only have like 10, 20 different servers. Now they have so many different servers. So in the beginning, you just stay with the very small ones. Like here, they call it at T3 Micro. It has a free tier eligible. So if this is a new account, you can use this one pretty much for free. And so this one has two CPU, 1 GB of memory, and normally it's going to charge you, 1 cent, 1.24 cents per hour. Okay, so if you add that per month, it's like $10, something like that. But then if you use a bigger server, for example, this one is a T3 medium, so two CPU, 4 GB memory, so much more RAM, and then this is going to cost more. So this is like 10 cents per hour. Okay, 10 times bigger than the other one. But if you see some, they're very powerful machines. Okay, let's see, very powerful ones. This one, like a 96 CPU, 192 GB of memory, and this is going to charge you $5 per hour. There had to be even bigger ones. Let's see. Let's see if they have any of those GPUs. This guy has 128 CPU, 256 megabytes of RAM. This is $10 per hour. Okay. And what is the most expensive ones? Yeah, 10 or $11. Those are pretty expensive. But I assume the GPU, let's scroll down. Yeah, some of these ones, well, this one has $34. So 126 to 128 CPU and 4,000 gigabytes of RAM. Okay. So uh yeah, so this one is like $40 per month per hour. Okay. A lot of RAM. And those are assumed the GPUs, I think. Okay, so those kind of retire. I'm trying to find they must have some kind of GPUs. Okay, let me see. Yeah, anyway, I don't see it. Maybe it's from somewhere else. But anyway, so some this one get very expensive. Okay, so just choose the free tier. Okay, so I will stay with that free tier. And the next option is the key pair. So that's also very important. That's basically the password. So they use a typical private key and public key. So I'm gonna use, I'll create a new one. I'll just call it 4800 fall 25. Okay. And then once you create, you gotta make sure you save this file. Okay, that's a private key. You will need that to log in. And these ones I'll leave it to open for now, the default for now. And that's the hard drive, 8 GB should be enough. Once everything's set, and then create a launch the instance. Okay. So this will actually start the instance for you. So all and now I think they're getting really fast. So just maybe within a minute or so, you can have this server ready. Okay, once this one is ready, and then you can start to log in and start to use. Okay, so that's the first step. So after today, you should get your AWS account ready. So I really want you to go through this process because you need to know there is a server running. How do you operate the server? How to access it? How to move your code over to the server? So all of this stuff. All right. So then I'm gonna refresh this one. It's gonna take some time. Right. So while we're waiting, make sure that your code, everything's ready. Okay, so make sure you got everything like check in. think this is still trying to initialize. And then if you scroll down, some of the important information, this one is called a public IP. So this IP address is public. So that's a real IP they assign to this server. So that one everyone can access it. Or you can use a domain name, something like this, to access the server same way. So the domain name will be translated to the IP. Okay. There are some other configurations. We'll look at that one shortly. All right, while we're waiting, I'm going to set up the keys. All right, so I'm going to copy that key. It's called us this one to the folder here. And normally you need to like turn that thing into a protected. All right. Let me just try to log in. All right. So some of you probably know this one, but just in case you don't, the command called SSH is very important. As you try to access the server, because the server is in Northern California, you don't have the access, okay, physically. So you can only go through the software channel. Okay, so you basically have to build a connection to that machine. And the typical way to do that is using command called SSH. So basically you build a very secure internet connection to that machine, and that will allows you to log in remotely, and then you just basically gonna control the server. Okay, so this command SSH is the one that you use to log in. So the major part is the -I. That's where you provide your private key. And then the EC2 user is the username, just like your computer, you log in, you have a username. And then that's the server address. So that address, you can find it from right here. Okay, so I'm gonna try this one. And then they ask me if I want to trust this one. I said yes. And now, as you can see, I'm in the actual server. So if you see the prompt here, I'm actually in a different server. This is not my local machine. Okay, so I'm already in the server. So that means the server has been created and you should be good to use. Nowadays, I know they also add a new way for you to connect. So you can go here and click on connect, and then you can also use their portal, which will make it a lot easier. You don't have to deal with all this, you know, the key stuff. So here, the same thing. So you're in browser, you can also do this one. But I still suggest that you need to know how to do that through SSH. Okay. All of this you can find the tutorials. Okay, there's some of the command they tell you right here. If you right click and then do the connect. If you do the SSH command, they tell you exactly what to do. This is what I did. And then this is the command. Sorry, this is the command you use to log in. All right. So once you log in, well, you can start to do anything. And all we need to do is we're going to run our Python code in this server. Okay. So very important milestone. Now, the next thing to do is that I got to run my Python code. But where is my Python code? Well, my Python code is in my local machine. It's right here. Okay. The question is, how do we move over our files from my local machine to the server? Okay. So there are two ways you can do it. One way you probably can think about, because this one has already been pushed to GitHub, right? And we all know how to get a repository from GitHub. So all you need to do is do a git clone, all right, and then put it here, and then you can get a code. So that's probably the preferred way, especially when you have a large number of files. So that's probably better. So let's try that. So what I want to do is go here. I do this one here. First of all, I'm gonna make sure if Git is installed. It looks as we don't even have a Git in this machine. Remember, this is a server machine. It's not a local machine. They just give you a clean version of the operating system. Everything got to be installed. So, how do we install a Git in Linux? Just ask. Okay. So these days, pretty much you don't really do Google anymore. So install Git in Amazon Linux EC2. All right, check the version. I don't need to do this. Just go with this. Okay. They do something called a yum install. So they also do it update first to make sure they get the latest version. All right. So once this is updated, and then they start to install Git. Once this is finished, you do Git and everything is good to go. All right. So good. So do Git clone, and we will actually find our server, this one here. All right. And then they're gonna ask me the username. Oh man, this one I can't remember that password. Okay, so you know what? Why don't I make it public? So make it easier. Okay, let me just turn that into public. All right, I'll just turn that into public. It's easier. So I'll do a git clone command. Me. All right, so now this whole code is in the remote server. This is the easiest way to go. You can also do something called remote copy. I've done that before. I can show you that later, but first of all, let's just try this one. Okay, so all the files are here, which is exactly the same thing as here. Okay, and what we need to do is do the Python budget lunch local database server here. Well, first of all, you find we don't even have Python. Okay, very expected because that's a clean machine. You gotta make sure you install Python first, right? So go back to install Python. This is very slow. What's going on here? Okay, so we did that one, and they want to install 3.8. That seemed to be a pretty lower version. Okay, we'll try this. I think I'm using the 12, so I'm gonna try 12. I'm on Linux Extra. They don't have this command. Interesting. Or let me just install this one. All right, we do Python or Python 3. Yeah, so that works. Okay, so we're gonna run Python 3 and then budget lunch local. All right, but then they're gonna require all these dependencies, right? We're gonna do pip install everything. But in general, the best practice is to run the the virtual environment. Okay, so I think that is the command, right? So we create a virtual environment and then we activate. All right. And then right here, we can do Python. And then we're going to do pip install. We put all the requirement is the file. And we need to change this one. Okay, let's just use this one here. See if that's going to help. Mm, yeah, they need a 3.10. Okay, so yeah, let's actually. So I was trying to install. Oh, wait. So let me get back first. So the 3.12 is already installed. But that's one still shows 3.9. Or is it because, oh yeah, I see. It has this one. Okay, that's why. So how do we make sure here, like how to make default Python to run this. We have that version installed. Let's just try this one here. All right. Okay, so this one fix it. What about Python? We don't have Python, then we choose Python 3. Okay, so let's try this again. So I go to here. Let me go to the virtual environment. All right, and then I'm going to Python, good version, and then pip install -r 3. Wait, we don't have pip anymore? We do. Yeah, there's something wrong with this one. Let me try to redo. Yeah, that's the pain part about Python actually. So okay, let me try this one. Okay, so let's try this one. Fix that one. All right, so just make sure both Python and pip are well installed. Okay, so okay. And let's try to get here and go to source. Okay, still not working. Try this one here. All right, this is promising. Okay, so pip install -r requirements. All right, so this one, they finally actually got all the dependencies, all the Flask stuff actually installed. It just took some time to configure, same thing, even if you use other Node.js, everything. Once you have a new server, you're gonna make sure that server has the same kind of setup as your local server. Otherwise, all the command stuff won't work. Okay, so now you could finally do Python and budget launch local DB, Py, and that actually runs the server. Okay, so this one, guys, is the same thing as the one we did here locally. But it's different because now this one runs on that server machine. So even though this one here shows local, but you could actually visit that server here. Okay, so what you do is that you go to the server here, okay? And then remember I told you that you can either use the IP or the domain name. In general, we prefer to use the domain name. And then what you do is that you do colon, the port number 5002. Okay, so if you run that one, it's supposed to allow you to open the web application. But this one here is stuck here. Okay, it cannot be reached. Okay, so you will probably also see this one. Normally, when you see this, it probably means that you're trying to visit the address or the port is somehow it's not like working or it's not allowed. Okay, so if you ever use this one, the problem actually happened at the port number because I told you this whole domain name is already public available. Okay, but the port number you're gonna make sure that one is open. So in the AWS configuration, so a very important configuration is something called security. Okay, because that's where they manage all the servers, the access. So even though the domain name is public, but for the port, they still want to control it. They don't want people to randomly go to here to visit all the servers, any port they want. Okay, so so as you can see by default, there is this thing very important called inbound rules. It said the port is 22. It allows the TCP protocol. So the port 22 is allowed for the incoming traffic. Okay, does anyone know which program uses 22? Yes. Yeah, so the SSH command, the one I run here to log in, that one uses 22, okay, by default. Okay, so because if you don't open that one, you can't even log in to that one. So normally every machine will at least open the 22 for you. Okay, but none of others are open. So you cannot really run like 502. That's not going to work. So what you need to do is that you go there to add this extra rules here so that we can for the inbound rules, this is the only one. I'm going to edit it. I will add another rule. So this one I'll go with 5002. Okay. And for the source here is very important. That means anywhere. Anywhere in the world can actually visit my site. Or sometimes you want to limit it to only my company, my organization, that you can specify another range. Okay. So that one is the custom TCP. The port number is the most important. I'm going to save this rule. And now we allow two port to be visited. So with this, if we go back here, same address, same port number, if I run this one, and very quickly as it shows up. Okay, so if whenever you see that you try to visit the site, it doesn't open within a couple of seconds, that means something's wrong. You don't have to wait because these servers are super fast. Okay, so remember, this one is a very big deal because this is a public domain. So if I send this address to you guys, you can always, access this one. Okay, on your phone, on your computer, it's all working. Okay, the same for kind of functionality here, all the address here, all this works the same thing. But the difference is that this one is in a public server and we have successfully deployed this program. Okay, so that is the whole process. It's not very difficult, but the first time you go through this one, there will be a lot of these little issues. Like I mentioned about this pip stuff. All you need to do is just keep trying and try a different command, reset, and until it works. Okay. But the fundamental theory here is that create a server, move your source code from the local to the server, and then finally run it there. When you run it there, you do need to have all the necessary packages and dependencies, everything set it up. Okay, so for example, now I want to make some updates, right? So this is the version. So I start keep working on this one. So I would say that make a change. Okay, let's see what we're gonna change. So we're gonna say that well, this one here, let me first run this locally. Python budget bench local DB. Okay, make sure that my local version is working because you're always working on the local version. Okay, so the changes, let's see. Yeah, maybe make the footer. Okay, so I'll go here, make the footer section more professional by adding some contact and company information. Just make some UI changes. All right. All right, so I go here, refresh the page. Yeah, this one got a lot better. Yeah, looks really good. All right, so I'm done with the change. I'll keep it, and then I stop server since I tested locally. So add, commit, and push. All right, so the change to go to GitHub, and now I'll go to the server. Okay, so we're gonna stop the server. Okay, and then we need to pull the changes. Git pull dash dash rebase. We're gonna new change, and then I sort of run this again. Go back here. Right now, this is the old version. If I refresh, and then the new version also has it. Okay, so that is called deployment. Very straightforward. And so this is a lot of fun to try. Okay, create a server. You guys can always, everyone just do your own AWS account and get your own server going, or you can share one account. I would say the most difficult part would be, getting the environment set up because in Linux, you will need a lot of command. But these days, just you should be able to quickly find those. Any questions so far? All right, very good. Now, since we finished this one early, so I want to finish the second part of the things related with deployment, which is some of the very basic operations you need to know how to do. Okay, so the operations mean that since they're not related with coding, it's about managing your servers, the environment. It's almost like an IT system admin, that kind of role. Okay. 10, 20 years ago, those roles are very important. All this major internet company, they have dedicated engineers that just do the admins and they got a good pay. But today, I definitely wouldn't recommend you to go to that route. I know some of you are probably very good at server stuff. You're very interested in IT, which is fun, but that's not where you get the highest pay. Okay. And also, not to mention, the roles are becoming less and less and less. The reason is very simple because we have a cloud. Like the thing I just did right here to set up the rules here, how simple it is. I don't need to know anything about Linux. I just need to go here to add a rule, and I can guarantee the rule I added here, I'm more confident than I hire someone else to do those changes for me inside the terminal. Okay, because the cloud take care of all this system admins. So that's not a trend. So unless you're really super passionate about the IT stuff, I suggest you should still focus on applications. Okay, but there's still some basic things you need to understand. Okay, so let me go through those. One of them is how you run the code. So right now I run this program here. Okay, there's some problems here. Okay, when I run this, the terminal is stuck here. Okay, and if I actually stop this one, I stop the terminal. Okay, um, there is a possibility that sooner or later this one will be gone. See, this one actually is gonna stop. That's not what we want because we want a server to be 24/7 and I can't just stay in the terminal, right? So this shouldn't be happening, right? So the solution to this one is that you need to run this one in the background. So I'm going to use this one here, okay? So I don't have to do the terminal. So this is the same thing. So I log into the budget, okay? And I need to run this one called source virtual environment and activate. All right, I do Python. All right, so I run it again just to make sure that this is working. All right, so now it works. But as I mentioned, what I want to do now is that I want to um, enable that this one always runs. So what I do is very simple. I turn that into um, a background. If you do this one at the end, as you can see, um, it runs, but then you can still do other things. Okay, so this one's still running. The server is still working. So this is a very good step. But then as you do this one, there are some issues. Okay, so as you can see, the logs are still showing up, but later on, you're not going to be able to track those when you come back. So when we're trying to do this one, normally you also want to basically turn the logs and then save them. You do this kind of pipe operation. and I wrote everything into a log file. Okay. And then I run this again. But this time it said the address already used because the server is still running. I run this again, it's not going to work. So I have to stop the previous server. Okay. So how do you stop a previous server? In other words, you have to terminate that program. In Windows, in Mac, you probably know how to do it, something like this. Yeah, I can just terminate, force close. Windows, you have the same thing. So that you already know it. But in Linux, how do you do it? You don't have the graphical UI to do this one. Okay, you have to use everything on the command. This one just Google. Okay, I normally what I do is um I have my own command. Don't ask me what it does. Okay, the PS is the process command that lists all the process. I have some of the parameters, some of the Amazon engineer told me that helps you to filter the ones you need. And the grep is the one that you can search things related with Python. Okay, if I do this one, it allows me to find out, oh, this is actually the command I'm running for this code, right? So I identify this one. The most important one, the first ID here. This is the process ID. You know, in our program, in our computer, when you run things in parallel, every program runs in the process. And inside a process, you can have multiple threads. So that's a relationship. You probably already learned this in the operating system. So that process ID is just like a program. So what we need to do is that we're going to terminate this one. We're going to kill it. So what you do is you do sudo kill -9, and then I'm going to kill this ID, and then that program is terminated. So this whole thing is basically equivalent to this. I go to force close, same thing. It's just you do that command, okay? Don't memorize anything, just go to ChatGPT to ask, okay? There you will find the answer pretty quickly. Now I go here, it's been terminated, okay? So with that, I can then run this command again and put the log into a file. If I do this one, so what's going to happen here is you will see there is a log file. And then if you see the log file inside, that's just some of this. So if I start to kind of refresh and go to visit the server, there are some logs going on. And then you will, actually, no, this one doesn't go there. This one still shows up. Did I do something wrong? Python. That's interesting. I never seen that before. Hmm. Okay, so I don't know what's been changed. This, how to make sure we output the logs to log.txt. That's what I did. I don't remember you need to do this one. Anyway, well, I'm gonna try this. Okay, so I go to here. So once again, let's find out that Python thread and then terminate it. Okay, and then I go to here using this command to run. Oops, sorry. I keep changing the wrong window. Okay, and using this one to run it. Oh wait, I also need to make sure this is going to the background. Okay, so now this one looks good. If I look at the log and looks like, yeah, this one has more things. So let me try it. If I go here, I refresh a little bit. Coming back, I look at this log file. Yeah, it has more things. So everything goes to the file. So you come back, you want to see what's going on. You look at the log file. Okay, that's one thing you should be always care about when you are maintaining your service. Make sure everything is right. If you see something wrong, you go to logs to find the errors. Okay, that's one thing. But the final version of the execution command is that let me kill it first. Okay, sudo kill. Okay, so I showed you this version here, which is already pretty good. Okay, so go to the log file and run the background. An even better way is something called no hoop. Okay, so this one, if you add it to the beginning, okay, that basically give you another extra layer of protection. Okay, just in case your terminals mess up, you log off, things will be still running. Okay, it's just the most reliable way of trigger any kind of command. You attach that one to the beginning. Let's see if the Amazon has this command there. Okay, so they do have it. So if you do this one, the rest remain the same. But the no hope is like another program that manage all the process. It will make sure that this process is always running without being interrupted by the login, log off, all the terminal stuff. Okay. So some of this little knowledge here, okay, that's called operations. You don't need to spend tons of time to um, learn all the Linux stuff today. It's not very useful. Okay, just know the most important one, how to run your code. How do you run the code in the most professional way? And what are the parameters? How to use this command? How do you search for the progress and then kill them and terminate it? Because every time when you update it, you need to know how to turn everything down. Okay, so that's something very important. Okay. All right, so that's how you run it. Some other things you need to know from operation side. For example, you have to know how to check machines, basic like status, for example, CPUs. Okay, if your server runs very hot, which means that a lot of people are visiting your server, you had a lot of requests, which is a good thing. But one point, there might be a situation that it reached the limits of your CPU or memory, and that will cause a lot of issues. The user is going to experience some of the latencies, getting slowed down, and nobody likes that, right? So if you want to check the CPU, in Windows or Mac, pretty simple. I think you can probably go somewhere here. Anyway, I don't know where to check your Mac, but in Windows you have this monitor, right? So you can see all these things in real time. But how do you do that in Linux? Okay, using command. Okay, there are different ways. You can find that easily with ChatGPT. The best one is called top. You go to top, as you can see, they shows up all this process that's running, and then look at how much CPU being used, how many being idle. Most of this is idle right now, and all the top progress that takes the resources. Okay, same thing as Windows. Okay, so that's one command called top. And how do you check memory? Anyone know how do you check memory in Linux? The command. Yeah, it's a command called free. So free, and then you do -m, it will turn everything into megabytes. So that means you have 900 megabytes total, and free is 146 megabytes. Okay. Disk is called a df-h. I have no idea what -h means, but I've been using that all the time, so you just know it. Okay, but obviously you can find the manual to figure out the parameter, but that's my point. You don't need to learn all this. Kind of you got to focus on building the really good software and application. Okay, this one, the drive, we still have 6.2 gigabytes available. Okay, that's how you check these things. All right. So anyway, so knowing how do you look at your machine, whether it's healthy or not, that's also very, very useful. Okay. And SSH command, I covered that. How do you log in and interact with the machine remotely? SSH, just knowing how to do the password stuff. One more thing is the port number. So this is very practical. So right now, this one runs, it's actually at this 5002, the port number. But this is not good because you don't want people to always go there to your URL and then still do a colon in that one. You never do that for the professional apps. Okay. So if you don't want to do this, normally what you do is that you turn your program into port 80. If your port is 80, then you can ignore that on the URL. So you don't have to do that. So most time we go to google.com, right? So we don't type any port. That just means that we're hitting port 80. Okay, so if you can turn your program runs in the port 80, that actually solve the problem. Okay. However, we never change that port to 80 directly because you never know which one is using the port 80, and making like 502 is a more secure way so people don't know where you're running it essentially. So what we do normally is something called a port redirect. So we leave the port 80 open. There's no program is going to run that explicitly on that port. But then we manage, if someone visit 80, I can transfer or redirect that traffic to some kind of port, for example, 502. So that way, it's just like something is running on 80. That's how it works. It's called port redirection. Okay. So ask ChatGPT how to redirect port 80 to 5002. Okay, there will be some command given. All right, they use IP tables. Other things, we'll just use this one. All right, go here. I run this. They don't have the IP table, so we got to install this one. Yeah, so we don't have this one. We have to install it. Yeah, a lot of things we got to install. Yum install. Yeah, that should be right. It doesn't allow us to do it. Maybe it's because I'm in the virtual environment, right? Let me ask it. Oh, I have to go back here. Nope. Put the arrow here, see what happens. IP table. Okay, we'll try to do this one here. Still not working. So, oh wait, I don't think I copied that. Yeah, that's always the pain part. You often need to just because the totally different versions, they use all the different things. This one, so 23. Yeah, this one should be the one to go. Something is messed up. Okay, so something about the Python version I did. Mm. And then they want us to switch to 3.9. That's not very good. Okay, we're gonna just fix one thing first and then come back to fix the other one. So let's see if this one is gonna work. All right, so this is working, and now let's try the IP table command. All right, so finally we can run that IP table command to do the port redirect. Okay, so let's try this one. All right, so now we're porting 80 to 502, but you still need to open that one because right now the 80 is not open. So we need to go here, security, and then just go to edit the rules. Save the rules. All right. So here's the program. Make sure the old one is still working, the 502 working. If you don't do that, and this is also working. If I open a new window, yeah, this one should still be working. Yeah, because I don't type any port, I'm just using port 80. And if you later on set a SSH, like HTTPS, that's going to be port 443. So you do the same kind of way. Okay, you do the redirect. Okay, so everything I covered today, I try to go really fast. I want you to see the whole process. As you are doing it, you gotta be very patient and sit down, go with ChatGPT and help you step by step. But at least you need to know the whole workflow. What are the major steps you need to do? Okay. So eventually you should have this server safely running on a server consistent. Right now you can see I close the terminal here. It doesn't matter. I close this one. This one is still gonna run. Okay, so it's very reliable because of no hook. And then set a port. You don't want to do a 502. That's not professional. And know how to restart the server, redeploy everything, remake all the changes. Okay, a lot of things going on, but it's a lot of fun to try those. Okay, that's how you run things in a very professional way. Okay, so that's your next very big milestone. Okay, I want everyone next week to be able to, at least finish the first deployment. It doesn't matter how much program you have wrote for a project, but set this early. After that, we'll teach you how to do a continuous integration that connects everything, automatically. So you don't have to do all the manual step things every time. All right. So, any questions? All right, sounds good. Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, when you were talking earlier about like space and all of that stuff, I was kind of thinking like it was doing what this is doing. So now I'm just kind of confused as to what is really the difference of those.
Sorry. So, what's the first part? What's the difference between EC2?
Like super base.
Superbase, yes, that's the database. Very good question. Remember I told you about the three tiers structure? Let me find it. Okay. Is this the one I use? Anyway, so the three tiers. Okay, so front end, and this is the whole backend. And Superbase, the database. It's just manage all the data stuff, right? And the server program is the one we're trying to deploy today. We use Python. Okay. So when you're trying to run the server program, you must have some kind of machine to run it. That's why you need EC2 to run that one. But that program still connects with your Superbase or MongoDB or any other databases. And obviously they also have a server, but we don't have to manage that part because Superbase, they package everything into a cloud server, so you don't need to deal with. But in the old days, you actually need to also allocate a machine just to run that database. Some people still doing that. So that's the difference.
So it's, so I was thinking you're putting the database on the server, but it's two separate servers.
It depends on what kind of a database you're using. As I mentioned, if you use, for example, MySQL, right? If you want to host your own MySQL database, yes, you do need to also run the MySQL somewhere. You can run it in the same machine. You can put another machine. That's fine. But then when you do the Superbase, it just makes things easier. Because they have the cloud. You just run it there. They automatically gave you all the address, so it makes it much simpler. Okay, yeah. MongoDB cloud, the same thing, but you can also run the MongoDB locally. Yeah, that was a great question. Okay, so you make sure that we're deploying this one. Okay. If your program don't even need this one, then you don't have to build a server, but that's not what I suggested. So every project you should have some kind of backend because you don't want the front end directly talk to the base database, you can do that one, but that's very bad practice. And it's very limited because you often need to have a lot of extra logic that you need the server program to manipulate in the middle. Okay. But yeah, for database, if you want to host your own, it's fine. But I highly suggest you use like Firebase, MongoDB, Prisma, Superbase. It just makes things easier and much safer. Okay. Good. Any other questions? All right. I will see you today, Thursday. Oh, yeah, I will see you next week. I will probably skip the class on Tuesday. I will let you guys to play around with this one. Okay. I may ask you to come back on Thursday to talk about the continued integration. Okay. This part very important, very hands-on. Try it. Okay. You'll find it very interesting.